We need a mandate from the people to fight against Donald Trump's tariffs, the attack he's coming against our families, our businesses, our communities.
It's official. Ontario is heading to the polls.
Tonight, the Premier confirms plans for an early election, the motivation behind the move. Good evening. It's been talked about for months, and today, Premier Doug Ford ended the speculation. He will call an election next Wednesday.
It would send voters to the ballot box on February 27th, more than a year ahead of schedule. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live in studio with the details and reaction to this snap election. Siobhan?
This was a fiery Doug Ford we saw justifying the early trip to the election, or for an election. The opposition parties, though, see this trip to the polls as opportunistic and self-serving in an already challenging moment. After months of coy answers, maybes, and wait-and-sees, the Premier explicit. The campaign switch flipped.
We will be calling the election next Wednesday. I'll be seeing the Lieutenant Governor on Tuesday. We need a mandate from the people to fight against Donald Trump's tariffs.
An election coming more than a year ahead of schedule. The Premier has painted something of an existential threat with tariffs, with as many as 500,000 jobs on the line. But opposition leaders see this trip to the polls as entirely unnecessary for a premier with a majority government.
We have a federal government that is also in chaos right now, and Mr. Ford has decided to create a little bit more chaos with an election coming.
Imagine, at this time where we should be preparing us and protecting our jobs, the only job he wants to protect is his own.
Now's a time when we need strength through unity to protect Canadian workers, Canadian jobs, Canadian companies, not a divisive election.
Doug Ford says voters will have critical decisions to make over the 30 days of the campaign.
If they want to go backwards to the dark days and the gloom and doom that we all experienced in 15 years under the Liberal and NDP rule.
But the opposition argues Ford has been falling down on the basics.
He's been focused on booze, bike lanes, big spas, and his rich buddies, not on the needs of regular Ontarians.
After 7 years of this guy, life has never been harder than it is today for Ontarians, and they deserve a better government that's more honest and that's going to actually bring back opportunity.
Election day will be February 27th, the first wintertime vote for Ontario in decades. Now, opposition leaders say they all intend to be competitive, but they're in a scramble to nominate people in Ontario's 124 ridings. All of those parties still have dozens of candidates to go. Michelle.
Thank you, Siobhan. So let the battle for a seat at Queen's Park begin. As candidates start campaigning for your vote, one name we know will not be on the ballot is the Premier's nephew, Michael Ford. Today, the Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism shared on social media that he will not seek re-election. Question is, how do voters feel about heading to the polls early? CTV's Janice Golding joins us with that side of the story. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Well, Ford's decision has come as a surprise to very few, but what will the consequences be? We have reaction from both political analysts as well as constituents here in his Etobicoke riding. Putting an end to weeks of speculation, Doug Ford has confirmed rumors that he will be holding an early election, setting the stage for a fight not against political opponents here at home, but a foe across the border.
He'll be running against Donald Trump. And he thinks that's his pathway. He thinks that that's his pathway to victory.
Despite already holding a majority, 79 out of 124 seats in the legislature, Ford is saying he needs the largest mandate in Ontario's history to continue conveying the message that Canada is not for sale.
This is a real dangerous, risky gambit for Mr. Ford. Elections cost a lot of money. This one is being pegged at just under $200 million. We're already hearing some people say, really, is that the best use of Ontario's funds at this time? Especially at a time when Premier Ford already has a massive majority.
When you call an early election like this, history tells us that even with big leads, those leaders can get tripped up in the first few days. Does he start to see his poll numbers slip because Ontarians don't think he's putting the public interest first?
Even in his own Etobicoke riding, some are questioning whether Ford is being opportunistic.
Totally waste of money. Yeah? Total waste of money. He lost my vote.
I think he's got the confidence to win. That's why.
Hopefully it will be the best for the province. I mean, I don't know. but they will do what they will do.
Still, while the nation has faced a leadership vacuum on the federal level, Ford has been stepping into the spotlight, even taking to American airwaves to speak out against looming tariff threats. And it has certainly given him a bump in the polls.
46% according to Leger. Those are monster numbers.
So political analysts say Ford's government is striking while the iron is piping hot.
I'm going to vote for that Ford, of course.
Well, I think it's a good idea. It's for the country, right? So as we are taxpayers, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Let's go. Sure? Yeah, no problem with me.
The next provincial election was not slated to take place until June 2026. Now, analysts say Ford may also have made this decision to get ahead of the federal election, given Ontarians have a pattern of choosing different parties provincially and federally. And at this point, all federal polls are indicating a Poilievre victory. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Michelle and Sean.
Thank you, Janice. Also tonight, a Mississauga neighborhood swarming with police. Officers negotiating with a suspect after a dispute between neighbors erupted in gunfire.
But first, we take a live look outside. It is Friday night, and while it's not as cold as it's been, it is frigid. Light snow falling in some parts, and clearly a whole bunch of folks enjoying the beautiful rink at Nathan Phillips Square. Lindsay Morrison is here with the specifics. Is it cold for them down there?
It might be a little cold tonight, Michelle, but we are going to warm up as the weekend goes on. And you mentioned the little bit of light snow. Let me show you this lake effect band over Lake Ontario, just brushing the shoreline. So if you have a few flurries outside your window, that's why. It is worth mentioning we're also dealing with some pretty gusty winds right now coming out of the west. Core temperature right now in Toronto is -7, but those winds giving us a wind chill. It already feels like -15. If you're thinking of venturing out for an evening skate, here's a look at what you can expect this evening. Cold overnight tonight, but mild by the end of the weekend. We'll show you everything you need to know for the weekend and beyond coming up. For now, though, Sean, I'll send it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. We turn to a Mississauga neighborhood where police spent the day outside a home negotiating with a suspect.
It comes after a daylight shooting, a dispute between two neighbors that sent one man to hospital. CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live from the scene near Credit View and the 401 with the latest. What can you tell us, Beth?
Michelle, this situation has been going on for about 8 hours now. Peel police say the suspect is alive and they are communicating with him. But for neighbors, especially those with kids who go to the school inside the police perimeter, it's been a very concerning day. With their guns drawn, a drone flying above, and the tactical unit in front of a home, Peel police have been working to communicate with the suspect and bring him into custody.
We are considering them armed, so we want to take every necessary precaution to keep the rest of the residents in the area safe.
The tense situation unfolding, officers say, after two neighbors got into an altercation, the suspect allegedly shooting a man in his 50s who was found outside, sending him to hospital in critical condition.
I'm just in shock right now. I don't know where to go from there. Really.
The gunfire erupted around 10 in the morning near Credit View and Highway 403 on Beacon Lane, near St. David of Wales Catholic School, a kindergarten to grade 8 school. Minutes later, it was placed into a hold and secure as a precaution. This man lives around the corner and has 3 children at the school.
This neighborhood's pretty quiet. It's very peaceful. All our neighbors are awesome. We've never experienced this shooting here before.
Erin Rowe lives behind the school. She's been worrying about the young children along with those in nearby home daycares who go outside to play. Rowe was coming home with her daughter around the time of the shooting.
It's a little nerve-wracking knowing that it was so close to home. I'm hoping that, people are okay, but it is scary that it was literally across the street.
Police say they're taking every necessary precaution. Along with their tactical unit and uniform officers, they have help from Halton Police and their K9 unit to resolve the situation as quickly and safely as possible. Over at the school, Peel police helped facilitate the student's dismissal after 3 o'clock. The man in his 50s, he is now in stable condition. Police are asking everyone to avoid this area. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Sean, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. The woman who died after a car plunged into Lake Ontario last weekend has now been identified. Friends and loved ones say that 25-year-old Agnesa Shakuli is being remembered as a loving daughter and sister. A fundraiser has been started to have her body sent back to Albania. The organizer says Shikuli came to Canada in 2021. She worked at a bakery on Pape Avenue for several years and had recently started taking English lessons. Shikuli was the passenger in a vehicle that went into the water at Ashbridges Bay on Sunday night. She was rushed to hospital where she was pronounced dead. A 23-year-old man from Oakville has since been charged with dangerous operation causing death.
And a school bus driver has been charged in a fatal East End crash that happened back in the fall. A 22-year-old woman was struck by the vehicle on the afternoon of October 9th when she was crossing at Kingston Road and Kingswood. She died in hospital a few days later. 60-year-old Anthony Phillips of Toronto was charged with dangerous operation causing death and careless driving causing death.
If you live in downtown Toronto or ever pass through, there's a good chance that you've seen the extensive work being done to build the Ontario line.
Now we're getting a first look at some of the construction that's been taking place underground at King and Bathurst. These photos were posted on social media by the consortium that's doing underground excavation at that intersection. You can see a machine with a rotating dirt cutting arm used to shape the tunnels and caverns as part of initial construction. And there is also a group photo of the crew giving you an idea just how large the cavern beneath city streets is at the moment. The Ontario line will include a 6-kilometer-long tunnel between Exhibition Place and the rail yard just west of the Don River. And west of the city, the province is moving forward with plans to extend the Hazel-McCallion line into downtown Brampton. The step was expected as part of a previously announced revamp that will also extend the LRT into downtown Mississauga. The approximately 4-kilometer extension will include a tunneled portion. Brampton's mayor called the announcement a game changer.
Such an opportunity for Brampton. 33,000 new housing units along this corridor, 17,000 jobs with this project.
Premier Ford says the expansion will connect tens of thousands of daily riders to regional transit. Metrolinx will now study the best way to proceed with construction. The LRT was originally set to be complete last year, and officials haven't shared an update on an opening date.
Here in the city, there's a major disruption to warn you about on the subway this weekend. Trains will stop between Lawrence, West, and St. George stations at 11 p.m. tonight with no service resuming until Monday. The closure is to allow for track work. Shuttle buses will operate instead.
Mayor Olivia Chow is keeping up efforts to promote her proposed 2025 budget, and today she highlighted plans to strengthen supports for renters.
We really have a choice to make. We can neglect tenants, underfund programs like Rent Safe, or we can choose to make changes that matters to people's lives, especially renters, which is half of the city of Toronto.
The proposed budget would fund 8 additional rent-safe TO bylaw officers to carry out building inspections. It would also put an extra $1 million into the Rent Bank program to help tenants who are behind on rent or need help with a deposit. Mayor Chow is expected to present her $18.8 billion operating budget to Council February 1st. It includes a combined 6.9% increase to property taxes and the City Building Fund.
A CTV News exclusive investigation has learned the RCMP has had dozens of its service weapons stolen in the past decade.
And that's prompting questions about where those firearms are now and what they're being used for. CTV's Kamil Karamali reports.
Out of the 45 service weapons reported stolen by the RCMP in the past 10 years, more than 30 were handguns, 7 rifles, 4 shotguns, and 1 grenade launcher. Roughly half of those stolen happened in 1 year back in 2016. There were 349 firearms lost by the RCMP. That included more than 200 handguns, over 40 rifles, and more than 80 shotguns. In total, nearly 400 were reported stolen or lost in that 10-year span, but more than half were recovered, leaving over 130 still missing. Firearm experts say they're concerned the missing handguns could be used to commit violent offenses and are speculating, based on the large number of firearms stolen, there could be gun trafficking happening within the Mounties.
It wouldn't be the first time that the RCMP was involved in trafficking firearms. It's extremely rare, to be fair, but it does happen. And so I would like, as a citizen, to see some serious investigation performed.
The RCMP have not responded to our request for comment, leaving many questions on which firearms are still out there and whose hands they're in. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
The federal government is loaning $1 billion to Canada Post. The money is intended to help the Crown Corporation continue operating amid what officials call significant financial challenges. Canada Post will receive the money through the 2025-26 fiscal year. It will be provided on an as-needed basis to pay non-discretionary obligations, but the Crown Corporation insists the loan will not solve its structural issues. Federal officials say the funding is needed as Canada Post works with Ottawa on long-term changes to ensure its viability.
Meanwhile, Ottawa is asking Amazon to reconsider its decision to close all of its warehouses in Quebec.
The online retailer has agreed to meet with Canada's industry minister after the government called for a review of the company's business practices. CTV's Judy Trin has the details.
Amazon's announcement that it was shuttering all 7 of its distribution warehouses in Quebec means as many as 3,000 workers and drivers could lose their jobs. The sudden decision angered the federal industry minister.
This is also about treating Canada with respect. Not only we had a discussion yesterday, but in a way that is hard for me to understand, they did not even mention to me that they would lay off more people after we had our conversation. I have seen better corporate citizens in my life.
In a tersely worded letter, Champagne questioned the company's commitment to Canada and said he was reviewing Amazon's business relationship with the government. Champagne called on Amazon to reconsider its decision, but refused to say what a review could achieve.
Trust me, I'm not going to tell them what I'm going to do in advance. That's called negotiation 101.
Amazon will take 2 months to wind down its operations in Quebec. Analysts say the government does have some tools to exert pressure.
Amazon provides web-based services to not just the Canadian government, but to governments all over the world. And this is a considerable source of revenue for Amazon. So governments do have some strategic power here.
The decision to exit Quebec comes as unionized workers at Amazon's Laval warehouse were negotiating for wage increases.
What they're saying to Quebecers and potentially Canadians is that, oh, we want you as customers, but we won't respect your rights as citizens, the right to form a union.
This isn't just about Amazon's business practices in Quebec. The company operates 72 facilities across Canada and employs more than 40,000 people. And workers at Amazon warehouses in both BC and Ontario have been trying to unionize as well. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
And we turn now to the latest on the Liberal leadership race. And one of the perceived frontrunners wants the candidates to participate in 4 debates, 2 in English, 2 in French.
This is an important contest. We are choosing the next leader of the Liberal Party. That means that we're choosing the next Prime Minister of Canada. It's really important to give all Canadians a chance to see the candidates in action, to hear what they have to say, to hear what they have to offer Canadians.
Chrystia Freeland sent a letter to the other 6 candidates saying the debate should be held as soon as possible. She's also asking all of them to pledge that they will run in the next federal election, no matter who wins the party leadership contest. Voting will conclude on March 9th. The candidates have until Monday to sign up new members who can vote for them.
Politicians in Canada are paying close attention to what Donald Trump has to say, especially with the looming threat of tariffs. Today, we were mentioned again as the U.S. president spoke about the benefits of becoming a part of the United States.
I would love to see Canada be the 51st state. The Canadian citizens, if that happened, would get a very big tax cut, tremendous tax cut, because they're very highly taxed. And you wouldn't have to worry about military. You wouldn't have to worry about many of the things. You'd have better health coverage. You'd have much better health coverage. So I think the people of Canada would like it, you know, if it's explained. But just to start off, they'd have a massive tax cut, and they'd have a lot more business, because then it would let business go to Canada routinely, and there'd be no tariffs.
Trump has suggested there could be duties on Canadian goods as soon as February 1st. That has prompted mayors of towns and cities along the Canada-U.S. border to form an alliance to protect their communities from the tariffs. They've already begun identifying alternate supply chains to try and mitigate disruptions.
Overseas, 4 Israeli soldiers being held captive in Gaza will be released tomorrow. The women have been held hostage by Hamas for 4 months. An advocacy group representing the families of hostages confirmed their identities today. Israel will free 200 Palestinian prisoners or detainees in exchange for the 4. More than half of them are militants serving life sentences after being convicted of deadly attacks. The exchange is part of the ceasefire agreement that has also paused fighting in the Gaza Strip for at least 6 weeks. In southern Lebanon, Israeli forces will not be withdrawing this weekend as part of a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. Israel says Lebanon hasn't fully enforced the truce, which took effect back on November 27. The deal requires Hezbollah to remove all weapons and fighters south of the Litani River. The militant group says if the Israelis are still there past the deadline on Sunday, it would be considered a brazen breach of the agreement.
A Canadian freighter is moving again after getting stuck in the ice off the Buffalo shoreline. The U.S. Coast Guard came to the rescue in Lake Erie after the Manitoulin got trapped in ice that was rapidly forming in below freezing temperatures. It was heading back to Sarnia after dropping off a load of wheat. All 17 people on board are okay, and the vessel is not damaged. The Coast Guard says it is not uncommon for ships to get stuck at this time of year.
Coming up, the season of sickness. If you've gotten sick this winter, you're far from alone. We take the temperature on what's swirling around as one official says we're in the thick of it right now.
I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, with all the cold weather this week, chances are your furnace has been running nonstop. Your home may have dry air. A humidifier can help make your living space more comfortable. We look at some of their pros and cons. That story is just ahead.
And what a week it's been. We had some very cold temperatures earlier this week, so this might not seem so bad, but it is going to be a chilly overnight. Plan accordingly. The weekend looking pretty good, comfortable temperatures, but we're also watching for a few flurries and lake effect bands, especially in the snowbelt areas. A detailed look at your weekend weather forecast is coming up, and stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
The cold snap this week had many furnaces working overtime, and you may have noticed the air in your home is dry and maybe even a little bit uncomfortable.
Dry air can lead to dry eyes and dry skin, but one way to put moisture back in the air is with a humidifier. Pat Foran checks them out in Consumer Alert. Pat?
Thanks, Sean and Michelle. A humidifier can help you have better skin, better sleep, and overall better health. But if you use one, you have to keep it clean, or it could spread germs and bacteria. Humidifiers cannot prevent colds and flu, but they can go a long way in helping your body fight off those nasty infections by keeping the air moist in your home. And while they won't prevent you from getting a cold, they can make you feel more comfortable if you have one. In this climate-controlled chamber, Consumer Reports runs humidifiers overnight and tracks how many gallons of water each emits. Ideally, you want a relative humidity between 30 and 50%. After many hours of testing, researchers recommended this VIX model for smaller rooms.
It's really important to keep your humidifier clean because you don't want a buildup of gunk inside that can spread microbes through the air and possibly get you sick.
To keep your humidifier fresh, always follow the manufacturer's instructions, which typically include daily and weekly maintenance. And if you have kids in the house, it's best to follow this advice.
In a nursery or a child's room, you want to make sure things are really safe. So Consumer Reports recommends that you get a cool mist humidifier. A warm mist humidifier, which heats water, has the potential to scald if there's an accident.
Testers recommend this Honeywell, which is easy to clean and use. Bonus, no wick, cartridge, or filter needs to be replaced. And if you use a humidifier, it works best if you position it on a flat surface, raised at least 2 feet above the floor. This allows for more moisture to dissipate into the air. Again, you want the relative humidity in your home between 30 and 50%. An easy way to measure humidity is with a hygrometer. You can buy one at most hardware stores or online for about $10 to $20. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, it was a cold day today, but it wasn't as cold as earlier on in the week. So it feels like we're making progress, and it's making those single-digit minuses not feel so bad.
Not so bad at all. And the weekend is looking relatively warm, which is nice. But I think tonight it's important to note that there is a wind chill and it is pretty cold.
Yeah, we're getting excited talking about improving daytime temperatures, it's going to happen by the end of the weekend, early next week. But we can't forget about the fact that especially these overnight lows remain very cold. It is a typical end of January weather, but if you have plans tonight, you'll want to bundle up, and same thing for early tomorrow morning. I have a feeling a few people have plans this weekend that maybe involve some ice fishing. The season unofficially now underway on Lake Simcoe. Ice hut operators were so excited to get out there yesterday. They said that the ice was about 11 inches thick in many areas, so that's great. Last year was a bit of a disappointing season for many. Huts were on the ice for about 17 days, but all this cold weather we've had this week certainly helping. And here's another improvement. We've been talking about how largely unfrozen the Great Lakes have been too. The last couple of days have helped with that. Current ice coverage now at about 23 total %. And so, yes, we'll continue to monitor that. If we can get the Great Lakes a little more frozen, we're going to see less in the way of lake effect snow, and we've got more of that in the forecast for this weekend. It's currently -7 degrees here in the city. It feels like -14. Overnight tonight, once again, it is going to feel like the -20s. We've got some pretty gusty and consistently sustained winds out of the west right now. Into tomorrow morning, there's a look at the core temperatures. Daytime high is going to be around -3 degrees for tomorrow, but it will feel colder than that thanks to the winds. We've also got one little system after another rolling through, and as a result, a few bursts of flurries going to be possible at times this weekend. The winds are going to change direction and strengthen this weekend. They might be at some of their strongest overnight and into the day, into the early morning Sunday, so just a heads up there. And with this, yes, maybe some accumulating snow. This is really in the traditional snow belt areas as opposed to the GTA, but it's worth mentioning in case you're doing some traveling, maybe visiting a ski hill this weekend. Here's how the forecast radar looks to play out. So there's midday tomorrow. Looks like it's going to be a mostly cloudy day for us with a chance of a few flurries midday, not amounting to a whole lot on the ground. And then there's overnight into Sunday morning, a burst of flurry activity, more enhancement the closer you get to the shores of Lake Huron as well as Georgian Bay. Maybe a line or two, a squall moving through on Sunday. I'm hopeful that we'll see a little more in the way of sun on Sunday too, because that will couple nicely with some improving temperatures. Daytime high of 0 for your Sunday, and then -1 degree on Monday. It's possible that, albeit briefly, we could be at about 1 degree on Tuesday before the temperature starts to fall once again. Some colder air returning for the second half of next week. And as you can see, we've got a chance of flurries pretty well every day over the next 7. That's your look at the weather for now. Sean, over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Also tonight, make a mitten, take a mitten. We visit a local school where kids are hooked on crocheting, a special program teaching skills and warming students. Well, if you or someone in your home is sick, you're certainly not alone. Ontario is at the height of respiratory virus season right now.
RSV, flu, and COVID are all up, but CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan tells us the numbers aren't particularly unusual.
Canada's respiratory virus surveillance report shows just over 5,100 cases of influenza across Canada in the third week of January, more than 95% influenza A.
We're in the thick of it right now. I mean, it's the middle of January, and it's respiratory virus season.
Dr. Isaac Bogosh says flu is the predominant illness, but RSV and COVID are also circulating.
It looked like the flu season got a bit of a later start this year. Not quite clear if it's peaked just yet. It looks like it's maybe leveling off.
He says numbers should drop off by the end of January. So is it too late to get a flu shot?
You know, we're at the cusp of really whether or not it's worth it. Certainly, if people are at high risk for influenza, it's not too late. And those would be the youngest, the oldest, and those with compromised immune systems.
Norovirus, also known as winter vomiting disease, is also up this time of year. It can affect anyone, but keeping little children hydrated can be tricky.
If there is a case of norovirus in the house or at work or at school, the best thing to do is to really wipe off high contact surfaces with commercially available bleach-based products and hand hygiene. The trick with hand hygiene soap and water is best.
As for RSV, the numbers are nowhere near the severe season we saw a couple of years ago, and new immunizations for babies and seniors in long-term care promise to reduce the severity of illness, although widespread effects may not be measured for a few more years. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The province today announced support for 2 new mental health facilities, which will focus on helping first responders recover from post-traumatic stress.
They put service over self every day. So we owe them a debt, and this debt must be paid through our utmost honor and respect. This first of its kind respite of care, especially that will be built right here in Caledon, acknowledges the mental wellness, that mental wellness is critical and crucial to the success of one's well-being.
The facilities will be part of Runnymede Healthcare Centre. The one in Caledon will be a residential facility, while the one in Toronto will provide outpatient support.
In other health news, the provincial and federal governments have reached a new funding deal to help care for Ontarians living with rare diseases. The Ministry of Health says it signed a 3-year bilateral agreement worth $178 million that will bolster existing coverage for publicly funded treatments. The province says it's invested $615 million over the last year to provide access to 49 drugs for rare diseases.
Whether it was on television or film, Star Trek used to boldly go where no man has gone before. These days, a lot of women are going there. CTV's Andrea Kay sat down with 2 Canadian actresses who have joined the latest film in the Star Trek franchise.
What are you doing in my space station?
I'm giving you a chance to get back in on the action on a galactic scale.
What a cute idea.
Star Trek Section 31 is the latest Star Trek original film. Like many recent Star Trek series, it was shot in Toronto, and Canadian actresses Humberly Gonzalez and Casey Roll found a place in the universe.
I'm not a fake fan, I'm just a new fan.
Starring Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh, Star Trek Section 31 is the Starfleet's covert division, living in the shadows since the beginning of the Federation. These actors have worked together before, but didn't know they were both cast until a visit to the production office.
You are not going to get your hands dirty and mess up your chances of becoming captain.
Oh, the best. I mean,
It's so lovely.
I think I walked into the production office, and usually there's like the headshots of all of the cast, and that's the first time I got to know that. I had a couple friends on set. One of them being Casey. I instantly took a picture of me and the headshot, and I was like, we're gonna be working together again. I'm so proud. Like, I'm so excited you're gonna be in Toronto. Yeah.
And then we have Augusto Viter, who was also a Venezuelan. We grew up in the same city in Venezuela, ended up immigrants in Canada, ended up in space together. So we always say we're Venezuelans.
For Casey Roll, acting is in her blood. Her parents are in the business.
No crew member left behind.
In some ways, it was very in my blood as well. The deck was a bit stacked. So grew up visiting my dad on sets and visiting theaters my mom was working in. And so I was always around it. I did plays as a kid. I always really loved it. And then, was taking classes. And then as a teenager, and I was like, guys, I'm going to do this for a job. Both of them had their reservations.
But not now. Star Trek Section 31 starts streaming today on Paramount+.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We survive together.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
Well, we now know some of the big-name performers who will take the stage at the Grammys. Organizers today confirming Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan, and Billie Eilish are among the nominees performing at the ceremony February 2nd in Los Angeles. The event will once again be hosted by Trevor Noah and will raise funds to support relief efforts after the Southern California wildfires.
Canada's own Tate McRae is out with a new music video. The video shows McRae dancing in a series of different outfits. McRae said on social media she actually donned 12 different looks during the shoot. Sports Car is the 3rd single from her upcoming studio album, So Close to What, out next month.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but you ain't.
And country singer Morgan Wallen has announced a stadium tour across North America for this summer. It'll be named after his upcoming 4th album titled I'm the Problem, although it's still not clear when that album will be released. The tour starts in June with stops in Toronto, September 4th and 5th.
After the break, integrating artificial intelligence in business. A survey finds Canadian executives have been slow to embrace the new technology.
I'll be seeing the Lieutenant Governor on Tuesday. We need a mandate from the people.
Updating our top stories, Doug Ford has made it official. Ontarians will be going to the polls on February 27th. The Premier says he wants to ensure he's got the support of the public as he responds to looming U.S. tariffs. The opposition says he should be focused on those efforts and an early election is not necessary.
We are considering them armed, so we want to take every necessary precaution to keep the rest of the residents in the area safe.
Peel police have spent the day outside of a Mississauga home trying to communicate with a suspect holed up inside of a home. He's accused of shooting a neighbor this morning in the area of Credit View and Highway 403. A man in his 50s was taken to hospital in critical condition. A nearby school was placed into hold and secure as a precaution.
I would like, as a citizen, to see some serious investigation performed.
And a CTV News exclusive investigation has learned 45 RCMP service weapons were reported stolen over the past decade. Most were handguns, but the items taken also included rifles, shotguns, and a grenade launcher. 349 weapons were reported lost, with more than half later recovered. The RCMP hasn't replied to a request for comment.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
We have more on Ottawa asking Amazon to reconsider its decision to close all of its warehouses in Quebec. The online retailer says it is willing to talk to government officials. Here's Paul Bagnall from BNN Bloomberg.
Hello, I'm Paul Bagnall at BNN Bloomberg. Amazon.com says it's willing to talk to the federal government and the government of Quebec about the company's recent decision to shut down its operations in Quebec. Dow Jones quoted an Amazon spokesperson as saying, quote, "We are happy to discuss this matter further with Minister Champagne and other officials in Quebec and Canada," end quote. Earlier, Federal Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne said Ottawa would look at its business relationships with Amazon in light of the company's decision. Some agencies and departments of the federal government, including the Canada Border Services Agency and Health Canada, have contracts with Amazon Web Services, which provides cloud computing services. Shares of Novo Nordisk, the Denmark-based pharmaceutical company, rose by as much as 11% in New York trading today, after a trial of its new weight loss drug resulted in patients reducing their body weight by an average of 22%. The new drug is called amycretin and is considered a next-generation weight loss treatment. Novo Nordisk is the company behind Ozempic and Wegovy, two established drugs often prescribed for weight loss. The price of gold has climbed to levels approaching its record high of last year. Today, gold trading in the New York futures market was priced at $2,778 US per ounce. That was about 1.6% shy of its record high price of $2,826.30 US, reached on October the 30th of last year. Let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar inched higher by less than a tenth of a US cent to trade at 69.7 cents US. West Texas Intermediate crude oil inched higher by 4 cents US per barrel to finish at $74.66 US. Meanwhile, Western Canadian Select, the Canadian grade of heavy oil, was priced at $60.63 US, down by 42 cents. As for stock markets, the S&P TSX Composite Index in Toronto closed higher by 34 points, or just over a tenth of a percentage point, to finish at 25,468 points. And that's the latest in business. I'm Paul Bagnall at BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
A recent survey finds Canadian executives aren't embracing the idea of integrating artificial intelligence into their operations as quickly as their global peers. Professional services firm PwC Limited polled thousands of CEOs around the world back in the fall, including 176 from this country. 79% of Canadian CEOs were planning to adopt AI over the next 12 months, compared to 87% globally. The report noted that many Canadian companies recognize AI's potential, but haven't seen it impact their bottom lines just yet.
This week, the company behind ChatGPT unveiled a new artificial intelligence tool called Operator AI. The company describes the service as an agent that can use its own browser to perform tasks for you. OpenAI says Operator can follow instructions to booking a trip with specific parameters or jobs like downloading files and analyzing spreadsheets. For the moment, Operator AI is only available to those with a paid ChatGPT subscription and not the free service.
The Toronto Raptors will be looking for their second straight win in Atlanta tomorrow night.
The top one easy too.
And good play call coming out of the timeout for the Hawks. Look at that, Raptors attacking the iron.
Toronto beat the Hawks 122-119 last night. Scotty Barnes led the way with 25 points. Atlanta hosts the Raptors again on Saturday when the Hawks will be trying to end a 3-game losing streak. Toronto's home to New Orleans on Monday.
Meanwhile, Oklahoma City's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was one of the starters for next month's NBA All-Star game. The Toronto-born Hamilton-raised star leads the league in scoring. He joins Golden State's Steph Curry as the Western Conference guards for the game in San Francisco on February 16th.
You know, this field a lot bigger than what people think, so that's a must. Exactly. Now, I've been thinking about a guest performance.
We now know who will be the guest performer alongside Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl halftime show. SZA will be on the stage with Kendrick Lamar in New Orleans next month. The announcement isn't too much of a surprise as they've worked together several times before. Most recently, she was featured on his songs Luther and Gloria, and she's been her song 30 for 30.
Just ahead, weaving warmth. The school staffer's crafty idea has students hooked on making mittens, offering up free winter gear while they're at it. Making sure children are equipped for winter has become a mission at one Toronto school.
An office administrator and students getting crafty to keep classmates warm. CTV's Scott Lightfoot reports.
Inside the main office at Scarborough's General Brock Public School, students come for more than just assistance.
Take some here. Purple, green.
They also come for mittens.
Thanks.
For those who might have forgotten a pair to keep their hands warm on a cold winter's day, there's a basket of multicolored mittens.
Good afternoon, General Brock Public School. How may I help you?
All thanks to the school's office administrator, Jadranka Stakic.
Being here in the office, I could see some needs of the kids.
Stakic has been at the school for more than 20 years, says she figured she could use her own hobby to help fill a need for mittens.
Like, we could get by the mittens, but I think handmade are warmer, and I like doing that. So why not turn that into something?
Over the years, it's turned into something she never expected.
Kids loved it, and then kids start approaching me, asking me if I can teach them.
Now she has students join her on lunches and recess breaks to work on their own creations. Some of these kids have been coming for years.
Being here, it's welcoming, warming.
Others are new to the craft.
I like doing this. I watched videos and I wanted to do this for a long time.
Okay, honey, you skipped one here.
But all are eager to learn how to make mittens and more, even bags and hats. They've also learned other skills like sewing and knitting.
Miss Stackage encouraged us. When I first made my first hat, couldn't get it until the third time. Miss Stackage helped me a lot.
As for how many mittens Stakic and the students have made over the years,
I really don't, it's seasonal. Kids lose them, and then in the end of winter season, I'll find maybe one, and then I'll take them apart and create new pair from 2, 3, so hundreds.
Stakic says she'll keep making mittens as long as the need is there.
Just grab a pair, okay?
Knowing she's giving the kids more than just something to keep their hands warm.
I just love helping them find the maybe passion in doing this.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
Oh, such a wonderful idea. And you really will want mittens this weekend, even though it is warmer than it's been.
Yes, we're warming up, but tonight, if you're venturing out, you need the mittens. And we understand that there's been a few snowflakes out there this evening as well. So here's one more look at where we stand currently. A few flurries in certain areas. It is -7 degrees, but it feels like -14. So don't forget the mittens. Here's tomorrow's forecast daytime high, -3. It is going to be a bit of a windy day, so it's going to feel colder than that temperature suggests. Mostly cloudy. We get into a little more in the way of sun on Sunday, but watch for flurries really over the next 7 days. And while we get a little bit warmer by the end of the weekend and beginning of next week, colder air is set to return by the end of next week too. We can't forget, this is typical for the end of January. Sean and Michelle.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's it for us, but be sure to join Heather Butts tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with your next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CTV24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great night.